Parametric equations are great and all, but sometimes it's still easier to just use a normal rectangular equation, one that just uses x and y without having to worry about t. So say, for example, we're given two equations in parametric form. We got x equals t squared minus 4 and y equals t divided by 2. To convert back to just a normal rectangular equation that we're used to, we're going to follow some steps here. The first thing is take those two equations, figure out which one you want to solve for t. And so I'm going to take a look at these, and I got y equals t over 2. That seems a little easier than the first one to solve for t. So what we're going to do is we're going to multiply both sides by 2, which gives us 2y equals t. That's poorly written. Let me rewrite that. 2y equals t. I mean, I've got bad handwriting regardless. Anyways, then we're going to take that and substitute it back into the other equation. In other words, we know what t is equal to. We got t is equal to 2y, so we're going to plug that back into the other equation. So, substituting that in, we got x equals, now instead of t squared, we're going to replace t with 2y and square it. And we still have that minus 4. So again, we're really just substituting in that 2y in for the t into the other equation. The other part we're just going to do is just simplify it a little bit, clean it up so that it looks a little more like what we're used to. And we're going to make it x equals 2y squared. Since it's all one term being squared, we're going to square all parts of that term. We got 4y squared minus 4. And that is the rectangular equation. Now we've got 3 examples here at the bottom. We're going to follow that same procedure. The first one, we got to make a slight change. There's a slight typo on there. The second equation, instead of saying y equals 2 plus 3y, it should be 2 plus 3t. So my apologies for that. But what we're going to do is we're going to take one of those equations and solve it for t and plug it into the other equation. Now it does not matter which equation you solve for t. In fact, you can pick whichever one you want. Choose whichever one looks easier to you. In this one, I'm not going to say one is easier than the other. I'm just going to take the first one just because, well, I just feel like it. So I'm going to take the first one, x equals 3 minus 2t, and I'm going to go ahead and try to solve that for t. In order to do so, I'm going to subtract 3 from both sides. We got x minus 3 equals negative 2t. To keep solving for t, we're going to divide both sides by negative 2, and we end up with x minus 3 over negative 2 equals t. Now this one's not as pretty as the first example we were using, but that's okay. Now what we're going to do is we're going to plug that into that equation, the second equation, the other equation we did not use. It was originally y equals 2 plus 3t, but now instead of t, we're replacing that with x minus 3 over negative 2. We're going to go through and clean that up as much as possible. So now we got y equals 2 plus, we're going to start distributing the 3 to what's inside. And if you want to think about it, 3 is the same as 3 over 1. So we're going to do the numerator times the numerator. So we got 3 times x, which is 3x. 3 times negative 3, which is negative 9. Over denominator times denominator, 1 times negative 2 is negative 2. Separating that out a little bit, we got y equals 2 plus, I'm going to do 3x over 2 minus, negative 2, minus 9 over negative 2. Doing a little bit more cleanup there. We got y equals 2 plus 3 divided by negative 2, or 3x divided by negative 2. We're going to make that negative 1.5x. And then minus 9 divided by negative 2. We're going to make that, it's going to be minus negative 4.5. Combining some like pieces here. Let's put this in standard form. Negative 1.5x for our first term. And we got 2 minus negative 4.5. In other words, it's plus 4.5. So we end up with 2 plus 4.5, giving us 6.5. So our final answer in rectangular coordinates is y equals negative 1.5x plus 6.5. I'd like you to try the other two so before I go through them. So take a second, pause the video, and give those two a shot if you have not done so already, and then come back when you're done with them. And I'm assuming you're just coming back from being paused, so let's go through and do the second one. The second one, we got x equals t and y equals t to the third. Solve one of them for t. You're welcome. It's already done. So what we're going to do is we're going to plug that into the second equation. Instead of y equals t to the third, we now know t is equal to x, so it's going to be y equals x to the third, and that's it. That's all. There was nothing else to do on that one. So, letter C, we got x equals the square root of t, and we got y equals 1 minus t. I'm actually going to solve the first one. It does not make a difference. I can show you what happens. I will show you what happens when you solve the second one. So we got x equals the square root of t. Now, thinking about how to solve that equation for t, we got to square both sides. So we end up with x squared equals t. Now we're going to take that and plug it into the second equation. The second equation used to be y equals 1 minus t, but now we know t is equal to x squared, so it's 1 minus x squared. And that's all. Now, we could go through and solve for the other, or solve the other equation for t. So I'm going to take the y equation. We had y equals 1 minus t and solve that one for t. A couple different ways you can go about it. I tend to like to leave the variable that I'm solving for alone as long as I can. Leave it on the same, or on the side that it already is. So I'm going to subtract 1 from both sides. We got y minus 1 equals negative t. That's one reason I don't like this one as much is because it's a negative t. Minus t means negative t. Make sure that sign stays with it. So now we're not trying to solve for negative t, we're trying to solve for positive t. So we can divide both sides by negative 1 or multiply both sides by negative 1. Makes no difference. Now y minus 1 divided by negative 1 gives us negative y plus 1. And negative t divided by negative 1 gives us positive t. Finishing this off, we're going to plug that into the other equation. We had x equals the square root of t, but now we know t is equal to negative y plus 1. These are two different versions of the same rectangular equation. One's the version solved for y, the other one's the version solved for x.